The crystalline chamber hung in the void of space, orbiting a dead world that served as a reminder to those who defied the Galactic Council. Inside, representatives from 847 species filled the vast amphitheater. Their forms varied wildly. Some floated like clouds of gas, others stood on multiple legs, and a few existed as pure energy contained in specialized suits. At the center of this gathering stood 3 humans in plain gray uniforms. Captain Ji-hoon Kim kept his face calm as he looked around the chamber. He had seen many things in his 40 years, fought in border skirmishes, negotiated trade disputes, but nothing prepared him for this moment. Beside him, Dr. Yoonji Park clutched a datapad with trembling hands. She was brilliant, the best xenobiologist Earth had ever produced. But she had never expected to stand trial before the entire galaxy. On his other side, Commander Dae-ho Choi stood like a statue, his military training keeping him rigid and alert. High Arbiter Velmuth rose from his seat at the top of the chamber. The ancient insectoid being had ruled the council for 400 years, and his chitin-covered body gleamed under the chamber's lights. When he spoke, his voice echoed through translation devices that converted his clicking speech into thousands of languages simultaneously. "Humanity stands accused," Velmuth announced. The chamber fell silent. "You have expanded into 47 star systems without authorization. You have built colonies on worlds not designated for your use. You have constructed military vessels beyond your allocated defense requirements. Most concerning of all, you refuse to submit your military specifications to council oversight." Ji-hoon stepped forward. His voice was steady, but inside his heart raced. "Hi, Arbiter. We came here in good faith. Humanity has harmed no one. We simply sought new homes because Earth became overcrowded. Every world we colonized was uninhabited. We built defenses because space is dangerous, not because we planned aggression." A massive creature that looked like a walking mountain of rock slammed its appendage down. "The human lies. They build warships, not defensive platforms. We have reports of weapons tests, of military drills involving thousands of vessels." Chancellor Breakter, military commander of the Vrexian Empire and the Council's main enforcer, stood next. His reptilian features twisted into what might have been a smile. "Let me present the evidence." Holographic displays filled the chamber, showing images of human ships, specifications of weapons, charts showing fleet movements. They claim peace while preparing for war. They colonize aggressively, taking resources that could support other species. They are a threat that must be contained before they become unstoppable. Yoonji looked at the data being presented, and her scientific mind immediately spotted the manipulation. The numbers were exaggerated, the ship counts inflated, and some images were clearly altered. She started to speak, but Ji-hoon placed a gentle hand on her arm and shook his head. He knew this trial was already decided, that the voting began. Species after species cast their judgment. Some seemed reluctant, others enthusiastic, but the result was unanimous. Humanity was declared an emergent threat to galactic stability. The sentence came swiftly and without mercy. "Humanity will surrender all colonies beyond your home system of Sol," Velmuth declared. "You will decommission 90% of your military fleet. You will accept permanent council monitors on Earth with full access to all your facilities, communications, and government functions. You have 7 standard days to comply or face corrective action." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Corrective action. Everyone in the chamber knew what that meant. It meant orbital bombardment. It meant occupation. It meant the end of human independence forever. Ji-hoon felt something cold settle in his chest. Not fear, but clarity. He had suspected this might happen. Earth's intelligence services had warned him. But he had hoped, foolishly perhaps, that reason might prevail. Now he saw the truth in Velmuth's ancient eyes. This was never about justice. It was about control. "Refuse," Ji-hoon said quietly. The chamber erupted. Species shouted in 1,000 different languages. Some called for immediate military action. Others seemed shocked that anyone would dare defy the council's judgment. Velmuth raised his appendages for silence. You refuse? The High Arbiter's voice carried a dangerous edge. You understand what you are choosing? Your species numbers barely 20 billion across all your worlds. The Council commands trillions. Our fleets number in the millions of ships. Your defiance is not bravery, human. It is suicide. Ji-hoon met the ancient being's gaze without flinching. We will not be prisoners in our own home. We will not surrender our freedom because you fear our potential. If you want our worlds, you will have to take them. Daeho felt a surge of pride at his captain's words. This was why he followed Ji-hoon, why he trusted him. The man had a spine of steel. Velmuth's body language shifted into what those familiar with his species recognized as barely contained rage. So be it. This council finds humanity guilty of defiance and hostility. Corrective action is authorized. You have 7 days to evacuate your colonies and surrender. After that, we will take what you refuse to give. Security drones appeared hovering around the 3 humans. They were escorted from the chamber in silence. As they walked through the corridors toward their shuttle, Yeonji finally spoke. They planned this from the beginning. This was never a trial. It was a formality before conquest. I know, Ji-hoon replied. I've been reviewing the historical archives during our wait. Do you know how many species in that chamber were forcibly corrected when they grew too independent? 63. The council doesn't govern, Yeonji. It controls. It maintains the status quo by crushing anyone who might upset the balance of power. They reached their shuttle and boarded quickly. The pilot, a young officer named Yuna Shin, had the engines already warming up. As soon as they were sealed inside, the shuttle lifted off and accelerated away from the council station. Ji-hoon strapped into his seat and closed his eyes. 20 years of careful diplomacy had just collapsed. Humanity had tried to play by the rules, tried to be good galactic citizens, and it hadn't mattered. The council had decided long ago that humans were a threat that needed to be contained. Daeho's communication device suddenly chirped. He pulled it out and looked at the screen. His face went pale, then flushed with something that might have been excitement or fear. He showed it to Ji-hoon. The message was encrypted from Earth Command and contained just 3 words that would change everything. Protocol Ragnarok authorized. Ji-hoon opened his eyes. For the first time since entering the council chamber, he smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Get us home at maximum speed, he told the pilot, and send a coded response. Tell them we're coming home and to begin Phase 1 immediately. Yeonji looked between the 2 military men, confused and frightened. What's Protocol Ragnarok? What does that mean? Daeho's smile matched his captain's. It means the council is about to discover what happens when you corner a species that's been preparing for this exact moment since the day we first met them. He looked out the window at the receding council station, at the massive fleets patrolling around it, at the arrogant display of power that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. It means, Ji-hoon added softly, that they're about to learn humanity's greatest talent. We don't just adapt to survive. We excel at it. And we've spent 20 years learning everything about them while showing them nothing about us. The shuttle jumped to faster than light speed, racing toward Earth. Behind them, the Galactic Council began mobilizing the largest military force in recorded history. Confident in their overwhelming superiority, they had no idea that the prey they thought cornered was actually a predator that had been waiting patiently for them to make the first move. In the council chamber, Velmuth sat alone after the other representatives departed. For reasons he could not explain, he felt uneasy. The human smile haunted him. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret, who held a card yet unplayed. He dismissed the feeling as paranoia. What could one small species possibly do against the might of the entire galaxy? He would find out soon enough. They all would. The shuttle broke through Earth's atmosphere 3 days after leaving the council station. Ji-hoon pressed his face against the window, and what he saw made his breath catch. The planet was transforming before his eyes. Massive structures that had looked like peaceful orbital stations were unfolding like mechanical flowers. Metal panels slid away to reveal weapons, batteries the size of buildings. What had been advertised as civilian shipyards suddenly showed their true purpose as military construction bays, each one berthing warships at an incredible pace. In orbit, hundreds of cargo vessels that had been making routine supply runs suddenly split open their hulls, deploying weapon systems and shield generators. "Dear God," Yunji whispered. "How long has this been here?" Daiho smiled grimly. "Since the beginning? Since first contact, we landed at Geneva Arcology, the headquarters of Earth Command. The building looked the same as always from outside, but once they passed through security, everything changed. Entire floors that had been marked as storage or administrative offices were actually tactical operations centers. Humming with activity, thousands of officers worked at holographic displays showing every corner of human space and beyond. President Sora Han met them in a secure conference room, deep underground. She was a woman in her 40s who had been a diplomat before becoming Earth's leader. Her face was tired but determined. Beside her stood Admiral Minho Lee, Supreme Commander of Earth Defense Forces, and General Hajin Kwan, whose Special Warfare Division was so secret that most of Earth's government didn't know it existed. "Welcome home," Sora said without preamble. "I assume the Council rejected our reasonable requests and demanded surrender?" Jihoon nodded. "They gave us 7 days. After that, they're sending a fleet to enforce their will." "Good," Minho said, surprising everyone except Sora and Hajin. "We were worried they might give us more time. 7 days is perfect." Youngji felt like she had fallen into a different reality. Perfect. They're going to attack us. They have millions of ships. Sora gestured for them to sit. "Dr. Park, what you're about to learn is classified at the highest level. When we made first contact with the Council 20 years ago, our intelligence services immediately began infiltrating their networks. Within 6 months, we had access to their complete historical archives. Do you know what we found?" She activated a holographic display. Images appeared showing species after species, each one encountering the Council, each one eventually being corrected when they showed too much independence or grew too powerful. The pattern was clear and horrifying. Every species that joins the Council eventually becomes a servant, Sora continued. They call it membership, but it's slavery wrapped in diplomatic language. The founding species created this system 10,000 years ago to ensure no one could ever challenge their dominance. They don't want partners. They want subjects. Jihoon felt pieces falling into place. "So everything we've done for 20 years was theater," Minho finished. "We showed them exactly what they expected to see. Peaceful farmers expanding slowly. Merchants interested in trade. A small defensive fleet using outdated technology. We played the role of naive newcomers perfectly." "But underneath?" Yunji asked, though she was beginning to understand. Haijin spoke for the first time, her voice cold and precise. "Underneath, we were building the most powerful military force the galaxy has ever seen. We had advantages they didn't know about. First, we learned from watching them. We saw their weapons, their tactics, their strategies. Second, we were unified. One species, one government, one purpose. The Council has to coordinate 800 species with different languages, cultures, and agendas. Third, we were motivated. We knew what was coming." Admiral Minho activated another display. What appeared made Daiho inhale sharply. The display showed fleet compositions, and the numbers were staggering. 40,000 warships, all built in secret facilities hidden in asteroid belts in deep space. Each ship was equipped with technology decades ahead of what the Council possessed. "We developed quantum drives," Minho explained. "Ships can cross the galaxy in hours instead of months. Our weapons don't use conventional plasma or kinetics. We manipulate gravity itself, creating localized singularities that can crush any ship. Our shields don't just deflect energy. They absorb it and redirect it back at the attacker with doubled force. And the resonance torpedoes," Haijin added with something like pride in her voice. "Weapons that scan an enemy's biology and generate frequencies that cause cascading organ failure. Completely species-specific, completely lethal." Yanji felt sick. We're talking about genocide. We're talking about survival. Sora corrected firmly, but not unkindly. Do you think the Council would hesitate to exterminate us if we resist? They've done it before. We found records of 3 species completely erased because they refused to submit. The Council doesn't negotiate with equals. They only understand power. But this makes us just like them, Youngji protested. Ji-hoon put a hand on her shoulder. No, it makes us prepared. There's a difference between having the capability for violence and choosing to use it. We built all this hoping we'd never need it. But we won't be slaves. An alert suddenly blared through the facility. A communications officer spoke urgently. Sir, we're detecting a massive fleet entering human space. Vrexian signatures approaching New Busan colony. Fleet strength estimated at 12,000 ships. And Minho's expression didn't change. Chancellor Breakter couldn't wait the full 7 days. He wants to make an example of us quickly. Sora looked at Ji-hoon. We're promoting you to Fleet Admiral. Effective immediately. You'll coordinate the defense of New Busan. Show them what we really are. Kyun stood, feeling the weight of what was coming. 20 billion human lives depended on what happened next. Rules of engagement. Full demonstration, Minho replied. We want every species in the Council watching this. We want them to understand that attacking humanity is suicide. Use whatever force is necessary. Even the resonance torpedoes. Ji-hoon asked quietly. Sora's face was grim. Especially those. They need to fear us more than they fear the Council. Only then will we have a chance at peace. Within an hour, the human fleet was moving. Ships that had been hiding in the outer solar system activated their quantum drives and vanished, appearing near New Busan in seconds. Ground-based defenses that looked like civilian structures transformed into military installations. The colonists, who had been drilling for this moment for years, moved into underground shelters with practiced efficiency. Youngji watched the preparations from the command center, still struggling with what was happening. Daeho stood beside her. You think we're monsters? He said softly. I think we're becoming what we hate, she replied. Maybe Daeho acknowledged. But I'd rather be a living monster than a dead saint. The Council made this choice when they decided we couldn't be trusted with freedom. Now, they'll learn what we're capable of when someone tries to take that freedom away. On the Council station, Chancellor Breakter watched his fleet approach New Busan with satisfaction. His son commanded the vanguard, leading 12,000 ships against what intelligence reported was maybe 300 human vessels defending the colony. It would be a massacre. A lesson to all species about what happened when you defied the Council. His communication officer suddenly looked confused. Sir, we're detecting quantum signatures. Thousands of them. What are you talking about? Breakter demanded. There are only a few hundred human ships there. Sir, the numbers keep climbing. 5,000 signatures. 8,000. 12,000. 15,000. And still increasing. On the view screen, space itself seemed to ripple as ship after ship materialized from quantum stealth. The human fleet wasn't 300 vessels. It was 3 times larger than the Vrexian armada. And every ship was broadcasting active weapons locks. Breakter felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Fear at New Busan. Ji-hoon stood on the bridge of the flagship Indomitable, surrounded by holographic displays showing the complete tactical situation. His fleet had surrounded the Vrexians completely. They were trapped. He opened a channel directly to the enemy flagship. This is Fleet Admiral Ji-hoon Kim of the United Earth Forces. You were given a choice. You chose poorly. You have one opportunity to withdraw. Refuse, and we will demonstrate why attacking humanity was the worst mistake your species ever made. The Vrexian commander, Fleet Admiral Breakter's son, responded with anger. You're outnumbered. Our ships are proven in 1,000 battles. Your farmers playing at war? Ji-hoon's voice was cold. Last chance. Leave now. All ships attack, the Vrexian commander ordered. Ji-hoon nodded to his weapons officer. Show them what farmers can do. Engage. The Battle of New Busan had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. The first wave came from an unexpected direction. Small human fighters, barely 20 meters long, launched from carriers scattered throughout the fleet. The Phyrexian commanders initially dismissed them as desperation tactics. Their own fighters were larger, better armored, and carried more weapons. What happened next would be replayed in military academies across the galaxy for generations. Lieutenant Ona Shin sat in her fighter's cockpit, not with her hands on controls, but with neural interface cables connected directly to her brain. Her consciousness merged with the ship, making it an extension of her body. She didn't fly the fighter. She was the fighter. The Phyrexian Intercept Squadron met the human fighters at standard engagement range. They expected traditional dogfighting maneuvers. Turns measured in degrees per second. Tactical formations maintaining proper spacing. Instead, Una's fighter performed a maneuver that should have been physically impossible. She accelerated to maximum velocity, then reversed direction instantaneously. No deceleration, no turn radius, just an absolute reversal that created a localized space-time distortion. The G-forces would have liquefied any organic being not protected by inertial dampening, fields powered by the same technology that bent space for their drives. Her targeting system locked onto 3 Phyrexian fighters before they could react. Energy pulses, each one precisely calculated, struck critical systems. 3 explosions bloomed in the void. Across the battlefield, 200 human fighters performed similar impossible maneuvers. They moved like dancers, like particles in quantum superposition, occupying multiple vectors simultaneously. The Phyrexian fighter screen, 3,000 strong, was torn apart in under 5 minutes. On the Phyrexian flagship, Fleet Admiral Brechter the Younger watched in horror as his fighter superiority evaporated. How are they doing this? No organic pilot can handle those acceleration forces. His tactical officer's voice shook. Sir, I think they're not piloting those ships. I think they're becoming them. Some kind of direct neural interface. It's technology the Council banned millennia ago because it was considered too dangerous. Pull back the fighters, Brechter ordered. Bring up the capital ships. Crush them with superior firepower? The Phyrexian battle line advanced, 12,000 ships arranged in the traditional council formation. Massive dreadnoughts in the center, cruisers on the flanks, destroyers screening the outside. It was a formation refined over thousands of years of warfare, proven in countless battles against species who challenged. Council Authority. Ji-hoon watched from the Indomitable's bridge. They're still fighting the last war, he observed quietly. They haven't adapted to anything in millennia because they've never had to. Every species they faced used the same Council-approved tactics. He turned to his weapons officer. Target their command ship. Full-gravity Lance barrage. The human capital ships revealed their true nature. Weapons ports opened along their hulls, but no plasma bolts or kinetic rounds emerged. Instead, invisible lances of compressed gravitational force reached across space at the speed of light. Where they touched the Phyrexian flagship, metal crumpled as if squeezed by an invisible giant's fist. Armor that could withstand nuclear detonations folded like paper. The ship's spine snapped, its reactor containment failed, and it became an expanding cloud of superheated gas. Fleet Admiral Brechter the Younger died without understanding what killed him. The Phyrexian fleet tried to return fire. Plasma cannons heated to stellar temperatures unleashed their fury. Kinetic rounds traveling at relativistic speeds hammered toward human ships. Energy weapons that could boil oceans discharged their full power. The human shields absorbed everything. But they didn't just block the attacks. They captured the energy, stored it in quantum batteries, and then released it back at the attackers with doubled intensity. Phyrexian ships found themselves destroyed by their own weapons, amplified and reflected. Sir, they're trying to regroup, Daeho reported from his tactical station, forming defensive clusters. Ji-hoon nodded slowly. He had hoped it wouldn't come to this, but the Phyrexians weren't retreating. They were going to fight to the last ship, which meant he had to send a message so terrible that no other species would dare attack humanity. Deploy resonance torpedoes. Target the largest concentration of enemy ships. Yoonji, monitoring from Earth Command, heard the order, and felt her blood run cold. She opened a private channel. "Jihoon, please. There are 40,000 beings on those ships, and 20 billion on our colonies," Jihoon replied without emotion. "This ends now, or it never ends." "I'm sorry, Yunji. The resonance torpedoes launched. They were small, barely larger than a person, and they moved slowly compared to conventional weapons. The Vrexians targeted them with point defense systems, but the torpedoes had shields that absorbed the defensive fire. 3 of them reached the center of the Vrexian formation. They didn't explode. They activated. The weapons scanned the local area, identifying the dominant species present. Vrexian biology was mapped in microseconds: their cellular structure, their neural patterns, their organ composition. Then the torpedoes began generating a specific frequency, a vibration that resonated with Vrexian tissue at the molecular level. On 300 Vrexian ships, 40,000 crew members began to die. It started with disorientation, then pain as their cells vibrated out of synchronization. Organs failed as tissue literally shook itself apart at the molecular level. In 3 minutes, every Vrexian in range was dead. Their ships floating lifeless in space, the rest of the Vrexian fleet broke. Ships that had been advancing turned and ran. Of 12,000 vessels that entered human space, barely 3,000 escaped. The human fleet could have pursued and destroyed them all, but Jihoon let them go. "Here, record everything," he ordered. "Full broadcast across the galactic network. I want every species in the Council to see this. I want them to know exactly what happens when they attack us." On the Council station, High Arbiter Velmuth watched the footage in his private chambers. Around the galaxy, 847 species watched the same broadcast. The message was clear and terrifying. Humanity had weapons that could kill selectively by species. They had technology that made Council fleets obsolete. They had been hiding their true capabilities for 20 years. Counselor Tavera, elegant avian diplomat, known for her wisdom, requested an emergency session. When the Council gathered, she spoke with barely controlled fear. "What have we done? We poked something that should have been left alone. We tried to cage a predator because we feared it might become dangerous. Instead, we created exactly what we feared: a species that now sees us as enemies. They must be destroyed," roared a militant faction leader. "We mobilize everything. Every species commits their full military. We crush them before they can do this to anyone else." But doubt had entered the chamber. Species that had been eager to enforce counsel well now hesitated. They had seen their finest warriors, the Vrexians who had conquered 100 worlds, torn apart like prey animals. Some counselors were already thinking about alternatives, in a secure facility deep beneath the Council station. Ambassador Junho Park met with representatives from 3 species in secret. Junho is Jihoon's younger brother, but where Jihoon was a warrior, Junho was a diplomat of exceptional skill. "Your species voted to attack us," Junho said calmly. "But we know you were pressured by the Council leadership. We know many of you never wanted this war, so I'm here to make an offer. Join us instead of them. Leave the Council, ally with humanity, and we will defend you from Council retaliation." One of the aliens, a being made of crystalline structures that refracted light beautifully, spoke in chiming tones. "Why would you protect us?" "We just tried to destroy you because the Council taught you that you had no choice," Junho replied. "We're teaching you that you do. Freedom is a choice, and we're offering it. The Council rules through fear. We offer partnership. Yes, we have terrible weapons. Yes, we can kill efficiently. But we'd rather not. We'd rather build than destroy. Help us change the galaxy." On Earth, President Sorahan addressed humanity in a broadcast that would also reach alien audiences. "We didn't want this war. We wanted to explore, to grow, to live peacefully among the stars. But the Council decided that our potential was more frightening than our intentions. They tried to cage us, to limit us, to control us. We showed them why that was a mistake. But this doesn't have to continue. Any species that wishes to leave the Council and join a true coalition of free worlds will be welcomed. We will defend you. We will trade with you as equals. We will explore the galaxy together, not as masters and servants, but as partners." By the end of the day, 17 species had secretly contacted human diplomats. By the end of the week, 40 more were in quiet negotiations. The council, which had ruled through unity of purpose, was beginning to fracture. Velmuth felt the cracks spreading through his empire. In 400 years of leadership, he had never faced a crisis like this. Species were questioning council authority for the first time in millennia. And all because one upstart species refused to submit. He authorized a message to be sent to Earth. The council demands negotiations. We must discuss terms. Ji-hoon read the message and smiled without warmth. Now they want to talk, after they tried to destroy us. Typical, he composed a reply. We will discuss terms when you understand that you're not negotiating from a position of strength. You're asking for mercy. There's a difference. The council was frozen, paralyzed by indecision and fear. Some wanted total war. Others wanted peace at any cost. Most simply didn't know what to do when facing an enemy they couldn't intimidate, and in the shadows. Humanity prepared for the next phase, because they knew the council had one final card to play. One desperate act that would make everything that came before seem like a minor skirmish. The real test was still coming. The war spread across the galaxy like a fever. But it wasn't the war anyone expected. Humanity didn't fight like the Council's previous enemies. They didn't engage in massive fleet battles for territorial control. They didn't try to hold ground or conquer worlds. Instead, they were everywhere and nowhere, striking without warning and vanishing before reinforcements could arrive on a military station in the Kelvin sector. 3,000 light-years from Earth, alarms blared as human ships materialized from quantum space. They destroyed the station's weapons, its communications array, and its fuel depot in under 10 minutes, then jumped away. By the time the Council response fleet arrived 2 hours later, the humans were gone, hitting 3 other targets simultaneously across different regions of space. Science officer Borum Lee had made it possible. She was 32 years old and had just completed the most important invention in human history, a quantum entanglement communication network that linked every human ship, station, and command center across the galaxy. Information didn't travel at light speed anymore. It was instantaneous. Every commander knew what every other commander knew in real time. Across 10,000 light-years, it's like we're fighting with one brain distributed across thousands of bodies. Admiral Minho Lee explained to the Earth Command Staff, the Council has to send messages through communication relays that take hours or days to reach their fleets. We coordinate in seconds. They're fighting separate battles. We're fighting one war. The advantage was devastating. Human strike teams would hit a target, and before the Council could send reinforcements, those reinforcements would receive warnings that their own bases were under attack. Council fleets found themselves constantly out of position, always arriving too late, always reacting instead of acting. But the real damage was happening in the shadows. Ambassador Junho Park had become humanity's most effective weapon, without firing a single shot. He traveled in secret, meeting with dissatisfied Council species, sharing information that the Council leadership had suppressed for millennia. He met with representatives of the Draenari, a peaceful species who had been forced to provide 40% of their industrial output to Council military production. You've been told this is for mutual defense, Junho explained, showing them documents stolen from Council archives. But look at these resource allocation records. Your tribute isn't going to defense. It's going to enrichment of the founding species. You're not members of a union. Your subjects paying taxes to distant masters. The Draenari leadership requested a private meeting with Earth's government within days. They weren't the only ones. Species that had harbored quiet resentment for generations suddenly had proof that their suspicions were correct. The Council wasn't protecting them. It was exploiting them. 17 species openly defected to humanity's side within the first month of the war. 40 more began what they called passive resistance, following Council orders slowly, making mistakes in their military production, accidentally providing intelligence to human forces. The Council, which had commanded 847 species at the war's start, found itself struggling to coordinate even 600, but the council leadership refused to accept defeat. High General Kakathar, massive reptilian being whose species had served as council enforcers for 3,000 years, proposed a desperate plan. We gather everything. Every ship, every species, every weapon. We strike at Earth itself. Cut off the head, and the body dies. Belmuth was hesitant. An attack on their homeworld will unite them completely. It could backfire. They're already united. Cathar roared. We must act decisively. Show the defectors what happens when they choose the wrong side. 50,000 ships, High Arbiter. The largest armada ever assembled. Earth will burn, and every species watching will remember what happens when you defy the council. The vote was close, but fear won over reason. The council authorized the operation. Ships were pulled from defensive positions across the galaxy. Species that had been reluctant to fully commit their forces were threatened with expulsion if they refused. Over 3 months, the armada assembled at a staging area just outside human-patrolled space. 50,000 warships, representing 200 different species, crewed by millions of soldiers who believed they were saving galactic civilization from a dangerous newcomer. The fleet was so large, it took 6 hours for all ships to complete their jump to Earth's system. When they arrived, Earth was undefended. Cathar stood on his flagship's bridge, staring at the tactical displays in confusion. The massive shipyards that had been producing human warships were empty. The defensive stations were broadcasting automated surrender messages. The civilian traffic had been evacuated. Even the defensive fleet that should have been protecting humanity's homeworld was nowhere to be seen. It's a trap, his tactical officer warned. It has to be. Of course it's a trap, Cathar agreed. But we have 50,000 ships. What could they possibly do? He ordered the fleet to advance toward Earth itself. On Earth. In a bunker deep beneath Geneva, President Sorahan watched the enemy fleet approach. They took the bait. General Quan, is your weapon ready? Haijin Quan nodded. She looked tired. The device they'd built had required 3 months of continuous work and had drained resources that could have built 1,000 warships. But if it worked, it would be worth it. The moon is fully charged. Waiting for your order, the Council fleet crossed into the orbit of Earth's moon. They were being cautious, scanning for threats. But their sensors detected nothing except automated defenses that posed no real danger. Cathar allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The humans had fled their own homeworld rather than face the Council's might. It was over. Fire, Sora said quietly. The moon had been humanity's first major construction project after developing asteroid mining. Over 50 years, they'd hollowed it out, creating living space for millions. At least that's what the public believed. In reality, 90% of the moon's interior was something else entirely, a gravitational resonance generator that had been charging with power for 3 months. It activated the weapon didn't fire projectiles or energy beams. It created a standing gravitational wave that pulsed through space at the speed of light. The wave was specifically tuned to resonate with the frequency of fusion reactions. When it passed through the Council fleet, every ship's reactor suddenly became unstable. 50,000 fusion reactors went critical within 30 seconds of each other. The Council fleet, the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history, became 50,000 miniature suns blooming in the void around Earth's. Mon Kakathar had perhaps 3 seconds to understand what was happening before his flagship's reactor breach vaporized him and his crew. Of 50,000 ships, only one survived KKHA's personal command vessel, which had exotic shielding originally designed for stellar observation. The shields protected the ship from the blast wave, but the entire crew was killed by radiation except for the ship's AI, which automatically jumped the vessel away from the catastrophe. The AI, following its core programming to preserve evidence, recorded everything and transmitted it to the Council station before the ship's systems finally failed. Across the galaxy, every species with faster-than-light communication received the footage within hours. The Council's Grand Armada destroyed in seconds. Earth untouched, serene. protected by a weapon so powerful it could eliminate entire fleets without ever being seen. The Council fractured. 70 species defected overnight. Others simply stopped responding to Council commands. The founding species, those who had created the Council millennia ago to maintain their dominance, found themselves ruling an empire that was collapsing in real time. President Sorahan made another broadcast. "We didn't want to destroy 50,000 ships. We didn't want millions of soldiers to die today. But you forced our hand. Every one of those deaths is on the Council leadership who sent them. We told you to leave us alone. We offered peace. We offered partnership. You chose war, and this is the result. The offer still stands. Any species that wishes to leave the Council and join the coalition of free worlds may do so. We will defend you from retaliation. We will treat you as equals. Choose freedom." In the Council chamber, Velmuth sat alone in the dark. 400 years he had ruled. 400 years of maintaining order, of preventing chaos, of ensuring galactic stability. And in less than a year, one species had torn it all apart. A message arrived from Counselor Tavera. She was resigning from the Council and joining the human coalition. Her message included a warning. "Velmuth, I know you. I know you won't accept defeat. I know you're planning something desperate. Whatever you're thinking, don't do it. Humanity has proven they'll match any escalation. Stop before there's nothing left to save." Velmuth deleted the message. Tavera didn't understand. This wasn't about pride or power. It was about maintaining the order that had prevented galactic wars for 10,000 years. If humanity won, if they proved that defying the Council led to freedom instead of destruction, then the entire system would collapse. Every species would want independence. Chaos would return. He accessed a secure database known only to the 5 founding species leaders. Inside was information about the Viral, an ancient enemy the Council had imprisoned millennia ago. The Viral were beings of pure energy who could possess technology itself, turning fleets against their own crews. They'd nearly destroyed civilization before being sealed. Away in a dimensional prison, the founding species had kept this information secret because the Viral were too dangerous to even acknowledge. But desperate times called for desperate measures. If he released them, pointed them at humanity, perhaps they would destroy the humans before they could spread their poisonous ideas of freedom. Velmuth began the authorization sequence to open the Viral prison. His hands shook as he worked. He knew this might doom the galaxy. But he also knew that without the Council's order, the galaxy would doom itself through endless warfare. Sometimes he told himself, you had to risk everything to save everything. Counselor Tavera, monitoring communications through contacts still loyal to her, detected unusual activity around the Viral prison dimension. She realized with horror what Velmuth was planning. She immediately sent an encrypted message to Earth. "You've won the war," she wrote, "but you're about to face something far worse. The Council would rather burn the galaxy than lose their power. They're releasing the Viral. God help us all."
Ow.
The warning from Counselor Tavera arrived at Earth Command at 0347 hours. Admiral Minho Lee was reviewing fleet deployments when his communication officer handed him the decoded message. He read it twice, then stood up slowly, his face pale. "Wake everyone," he ordered. "Get me President Han, all senior commanders, and every xenobiologist we have. And find Dr. Yoonji Park immediately." Within 20 minutes, Earth's leadership assembled in the emergency command center. Yoonji arrived, still wearing her sleep clothes, hair disheveled, but her mind sharp as always. When she heard about the Viral, her reaction was immediate and visceral. No, they can't be that stupid. She pulled up historical archives on the main display. Documents humanity had stolen from Council databases years ago. The Viral nearly ended all life in the galaxy 8,000 years ago. They're not biological. They're pure energy beings that exist at quantum levels. They can inhabit technology, possess ships, turn entire fleets into weapons against their own creators. The Council imprisoned them because they couldn't kill them. Can we fight them? President Sorahan asked. Yoongi's hands shook as she worked through the data. Conventional weapons are useless. They exist as energy patterns. You can't shoot what doesn't have a physical form. They feed on fear, grow stronger from conflict. The only reason the Council defeated them before was by creating a dimensional prison that isolated them from normal space-time. So if the Council releases them, Ji-hoon began, they'll possess the Council's own fleet first. Yoongi finished. Then they'll spread. Every ship, every station, every piece of technology becomes a potential host. They'll turn the galaxy's own weapons against itself. The room fell silent. They had spent a year preparing for war with the Council. They'd built weapons to defeat conventional forces. But this was something entirely different. Daeho spoke quietly. We could let it happen. Let the Viral destroy the Council. Our enemy eliminates itself, and we stay out of it. The Viral won't stop with the Council, Yoongi said sharply. Once they're free, they'll consume everything. Every species, including us. Velmuth just sentenced the entire galaxy to death because he couldn't accept losing. Sora looked at Admiral Minho. Options. We have one possibility, Yoongi said, pulling up technical specifications. The resonance torpedoes. They work by generating specific frequencies that affect biological targets. But the basic principle could be adapted. The Viral exists at a specific quantum frequency. If we could generate a counter-frequency, we might be able to trap them in a quantum stasis field. How long to develop it? Ji-hoon asked. I don't know. Days? Weeks? We'd be working from theory. Yoongi looked around the room. And even if we succeed, the power requirements would be enormous. We'd need to focus the output of every ship in our fleet simultaneously. It would leave us completely vulnerable during the operation. The tactical display updated, showing the Council station. Red warnings flashed as dimensional barriers began to fail around the Viral prison. They had maybe hours before the entities escaped. President Sora made the decision. We saved them. The Council tried to destroy us, yes. They're responsible for thousands of human deaths. But I won't let millions more die, human and alien alike, because we stood by and did nothing. She looked at each person in the room. This is what separates us from them. We have the power to let our enemies burn. We choose not to use it. The orders went out across the human fleet. Every ship was redirected to the Council station. Science teams worked frantically to modify the resonance torpedo technology, and Commander Gi-wan Kong, one of humanity's best special forces officers, assembled a strike team for a mission that was likely suicide. We're going into the Council station. Gi-wan briefed his team of 50 operators. Our job is to evacuate Council leadership before the Viral consume them. Yes, these are the same beings who tried to exterminate us. No, we're not leaving them to die. We're humans. We're better than that. The Viral broke free 6 hours later. The dimensional prison shattered and pure malevolent energy poured into normal space. The entities had been trapped for 8,000 years and their rage was infinite. They immediately possessed the nearest technology council. Defense platforms surrounding their own prison. The platforms turned their weapons on the council station itself. Tearing through shields and armor, ships in orbit found their systems overridden. Their crews locked out of controls as the vessels began firing on anything nearby. It spread like a virus, jumping from system to system, ship to ship. On the council station, alarms blared as sections decompressed. High Arbiter Velmuth stood in the council chamber, finally understanding the magnitude of his mistake. Around him, representatives from 600 species watched their fleets turn against them. Watched their civilization begin to tear itself apart. What have I done? Velmuth whispered. Counselor Tavera grabbed his arm. We need to evacuate now. There's nowhere to go. The Viral will possess any ship we board. Then we die here, Tavera said simply. After 10,000 years, the council ends because we were too afraid to change. The chamber doors exploded inward. Juan Kong and his team stormed in, weapons ready, wearing armor that protected them from vacuum and radiation. Anyone who wants to live, follow us. Move now. The counselors stared in shock. These were humans, the species they'd tried to eradicate. Now those same humans were offering rescue. Some counselors hesitated, pride and prejudice warring with survival instinct. Others ran immediately toward the exits Juwan's team had secured. Velmuth stood frozen, staring at Juwan. Why? After everything we did to you, why save us? Juwan grabbed the ancient insectoid being and physically dragged him toward the exit. Because being able to kill your enemies and choosing not to is the definition of strength. Now shut up and run. The evacuation was chaos. Viral-possessed ships hammered the station, which was breaking apart section by section. Giwan's team guided terrified counselors through collapsing corridors, across decompressed sections, toward docking bays where human extraction ships waited. The Viral tried to possess the human ships. But Science Officer Borum Lee had designed a quantum shielding that disrupted their ability to interface with human technology, at least temporarily. 200 counselors made it aboard human ships. The rest were lost when the council station's main reactor exploded, killing thousands. The human ships jumped to safety moments before the station became an expanding cloud of debris in orbit around Earth. The human fleet assembled. Every warship, every carrier, every vessel capable of mounting a weapon system gathered in formation. At the center, Youngji's modified resonance torpedoes were loaded and ready, but the calculations showed a problem. We need an anchor point, Youngji explained to Admiral Minho over the command channel. The quantum stasis field will collapse without something to hold it in place permanently. The anchor needs to be powered by an exponential energy source. Like what? Minho asked, though his gut already knew the answer. A star-going supernova, or Youngji's voice broke, or a quantum core detonated at the center of the field. One of our capital ships, Minho looked around his bridge. His crew had been with him for 20 years. They'd built this fleet together, fought together, bled together. How long to evacuate, sir? His executive officer asked. How long to get everyone off this ship? We're the flagship. We have the most powerful quantum core in the fleet. Minho smiled sadly. Seems fitting that we'd be the anchor.